Next question from the floor, please.
Okay, so we all know we're there Generation Y, so we're all up for change. What do you see needs to be changed if you see change is needed? That's already. Do you think there's change that's needed, and if you do, what is out there?
Okay, in my opinion, throughout all my experience here in IPSGA, I've been listening this whole time. I'm already aware of what students want, you know what I mean? So when I talked about major issues, resolutions, stuff like that, I'm talking about things like parking, restaurants, smoking policy that better fits the non-smokers and the smokers, signage across campus, campus beautification, that kind of things. I've already been hearing this out so much. I wish I had time to fully tell you how I'd want to, fix every single one of those things. Maybe you can talk to me, later. We can go in more detail on this. But those are a few of the major issues we've already heard. Obviously, yeah, the awareness is great. Getting out to more students to know that, hey, look at what we can do for you, funding, changing campus. But those are a few of the major issues.
All right, so it seems that your question was twofold. Do I think change is required, and if so, what? Well, the first, certainly. I mean, the student body is obviously constantly changing, and if the student body is changing, then the student government, and specifically the student senate, should also be changing. Now, specifically how? Well, that's kind of the nature of change. I can't say, well, we need to do this specifically, and that's going to be it, okay? We need to maintain that flexibility, okay? Like I said, the student body is constantly changing. The economy is in a state of upheaval. The student body of IPFW is going to be changing dramatically over the next 4 years. It constantly is. We need to keep ourselves flexible and keep listening to that student body so that we can always make sure that we're working to better reflect what they want.
Changes that's needed currently is one, if the ratification passed, every branch needs to have their own set of bylaws, and that's a goal that we need to get done before the end of the semester. That way the new administration has a set of bylaws. It's something that we currently do not have, so that's something that I really want to get done before the end of this year. Two, I want to make sure that we get everything heard from the student body, and like he had said before, we're constantly evolving, we're constantly changing, that sometimes we have to revisit certain things. For example, the plus and minus system, they took a survey and things about that years ago, which is not a true reflection of what the students want now. So understanding that we have to remain flexible and understanding, so we understand what the current students want and how we can get it done in a timely and efficient manner for them.
Next question, please.
This question is directed towards Jonathan. Earlier, I heard you say when you were speaking on experience and whatnot, and how you're. Correct me if I'm wrong when you answered the question. You're the type to get it done, and experience isn't really an issue with you. I was just wondering if you understood the job title as Vice President of Legislation. I'm not saying that none of the other job titles are important, but this one happens to be very important. I mean, the Senate controls a lot of the money that goes onto these organizations, and I think having somewhat of a bit of experience might help. So if you could let me know, if you could just elaborate on that. Yeah.
Okay, now, first off, clarification. Most importantly, I'm not saying that knowledge isn't important. Knowledge is critically important. Obviously, you have to know what you're going to be doing, what your duties, what your responsibilities, what your authority is, before you can execute the position. So knowledge is critical. Experience, on the other hand, experience is kind of a double-edged sword, because yes, experience in student government and in Senate in particular can give you insight into certain processes. It can yield a sort of savoir-faire, okay? But it can also lock you into a certain mindset, okay? It's very easy when you work into a particular social setting to allow the kind of unspoken rules of that social setting to become ingrained in your mind without even thinking about it, okay? We all do it all the time. But that's why experience kind of acts as a double-edged sword, because the more you're in student government, the more you may know about student
Time.
government.
Next question.
How do you plan to measure the public opinion of the student body of IPFW?
You know, that's easy. Do what we've been doing, but at a higher rate and level. Everybody that was up here today had great ideas, and they're probably all that I would probably take under my wing if I got in there. Are you familiar with Chancellor Chats at all? How about those, but with the Student Center or with the executive officers? Get out there on campus, get out a WALB, go out there, set up times where it's like, hey, come chat with us, you know what I mean? Do that. Really just try to, surveys are great. Basically use every route possible, but I'd have to agree with Terrell, as he said earlier, that really one-on-one communication is the best. I think you get the best measures and results from that. So whatever means possible to get one-on-one communication. So.
Okay, now, how you communicate with students, specifically how you get feedback from the students and how you learn what the students want, is probably the biggest, most important factor in how you execute the position of Vice President of Legislation. And that's an area where I think we can really improve, because while one-on-one communication with students is great and essential, I mean, it's absolutely essential. There is no other form of communication that's quite like that. We also need a broader viewpoint. I mean, you cannot sit down one-on-one and talk with every single student at IPFW. It is impossible. I'm not going to sit down and take time out of every week to sit with 12,000 people and speak with them individually, which is why we need broader means of communication. Communication through Facebook, surveys, just standing out on the street and getting people to tell you what they want. We need those broader means of communication to learn what the students want.
Time. Next candidate, please.
Can you repeat the question for me? Make sure I got it.
How do you plan to measure public opinion?
How do I plan to measure public opinion? Currently, we have the Chancellor's Chat. I work for Dr. McClellan, and it was my job to make sure there was over 30 people there of diversity that's normally not there, and I met that goal for this year. But to understand how you want to get the goals of the people, I'm not a research student, nor am I a statistician. So therefore, we have to understand that we have majors that are currently here that can help with assist, and that means we have to utilize the resources that's on this campus. When we did the food service project, we used business marketing majors and people who are of that nature, of that field of experience, to help us gather the information, and we got a lot of great feedback, and it was great results that they used for Fortune 500 companies. And so it's understanding that we have resources here available on campus, and using those resources, using the resources that we have, and use them to the best of the ability that we can.